Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 4 live stream for the US Open. Here in this prop preview, we're going to get you ready for all of your exposure tomorrow with a look at some of the averages from round 3's action, a weather report for tomorrow as well as a look through all the different categories that you can bet for Sunday on sites like Underdog and Prize Picks, the sports books as well. That'll be round scores, birdie, bogey props, as well as any fairways or green regulation props that you're curious about for tomorrow. But before we hop on in, just want to say hopefully everyone's having a fantastic weekend so far and is ready to get after it for the Sunday slate, where we're going to get another major championship crowned. Also, probably a new winner, at least one we haven't seen for quite some time. If it's one of those top 4 or 5 that's getting it done, which I have to say I like. A little change of pace compared to all the studs that were winning those majors. So let's get after it for tomorrow. So we got Parlay Llama down there. Also Joseph W. Hoover, my guy, always showing up at these live streams. And Parlay says, thanks for another great week. Of course, man, I appreciate the kind words and you stopping by for a lot of these streams. And yeah, you are fading my guy Brooks. It looks like you said you're going to nuke him for his strokes. I might not necessarily agree with that, but hey, if that's your take, that's your narrative for round number 4, then I couldn't blame you for making that sort of bet. So let me know any sort of bets you guys want me to deep dive, and we'll be doing that a little bit later on. Before we do so, though, we're going to fully deep dive the conditions for Sunday. So let's do that, and then we'll get back to any of your comments later on. First thing I need you guys to do is to smash that like button if you guys haven't already. And also go ahead and comment down below if you're watching this live. You can do so, or you can do it after the words as well. Who you got winning this thing? I'm curious about who you're going to see taking home this championship. I personally have got Adam Scott if I had to pick one specific player, but kind of want to see what the community is thinking, because I don't have an outright horse that's in it at this point. I only went with Scotty Scheffler, probably not going to get the job done, but maybe I can get a live outright here for Sunday and a little sweat out there on the golf course. But in terms of the averages, they did play a hair easier than the first few rounds, and I thought I would play +2.5 to +3, ended up coming in at +2.68. So, our read on the golf course, how we expected it to play, pretty much came to fruition. We did think the birdie average was going to go up quite significantly. I thought it was going to go up to like 2.6, maybe 2.7 per round. It only went up to about 2.44, but the bogey average is where you saw a massive difference compared to the first few days. Not only did it drop over a bogey or worse per round, but also the double bogey average, which is something that we don't really see on the sheet right here, but the double bogey average almost went in half as well. So there was a big difference on the scoring from one day to the other, and that's because of how soft the golf course was. With the rain they got, fairways were much easier to hold. Your greens regulation rate was much higher than the first few days, and it was that combined with the fact that the cut line happened after rounds 1 and 2, and you got some of your lower tier players out of there. And with the weather looking pretty similar for tomorrow, there might be some rain during play at some point, maybe towards midday, perhaps towards the afternoon. That's where a lot of these weather models are calling for that rain to come through. It could be a pretty similar dynamic. So between the round 3 and round 4, I'm not sure we're going to see a whole ton change here. The one dynamic that could make things a little bit harder would, of course, be those pin locations, which we'll go through in just a second after we finish off the weather. But just to go through everything on the weather side, let's take a look at the forecast for Sunday, where you can see that rain in the afternoon that I was talking about, but the winds also might kick up in the afternoon. So if that's the case, and these guys going off later get the rain and the windy conditions, I mean, that could be brutal during the PM hours, but the morning guys have pretty much the same kind of conditions as the guys got this afternoon. So by the way, if you go to the stat averages from today and you separate them versus the first and the second half played to over a 3 over par scoring average. The second half, when the rain stopped and you didn't have any of that to contend with, only played like 1.5, 1.6 over par. And that was probably also due to the talent gap difference, also the form difference of the players that were in contention. They were playing better golf than the guys that just hardly made it to the weekend. But it was also mostly due to the fact that conditions were so much better. And for tomorrow, I think it could be a little bit of the opposite, where the first half of tee times are getting those pristine conditions, whereas the later starters, the guys in the top 10, top 20, are going to be getting perhaps the harder side of conditions. Now, this weather situation is volatile. If you take a look at some of these other models, they're not calling for the same sort of thing. So this HRDPS, for example, not nearly as much precipitation, but the winds do kick up a little bit in this forecast, and there is a little bit of rain towards the very end. This NEM model is calling for the rain a little bit earlier in the day. which would kind of throw off that weather edge too. But you can see here that a lot of them are calling for storms in the afternoon. So the Icon model, I believe, is doing the same thing. GFS model also has a majority of that rain in the afternoon. If that ends up happening, just like what it did today, but maybe on the opposite side of the tee times, then there could be an advantage to maybe taking positive stance plays for your first half of tee times, and then maybe some of your fades for the guys that are going off a little bit later. But we'll have to keep an eye on that weather situation. I would say that it's pretty volatile, hard to really account for right now. And I'm personally, at least at this stage tonight, where we don't have concrete weather forecast, we don't have an exact idea of what's going to happen, it's not going to be a massive part of my process. I mentioned that for the showdown stream I did a little bit earlier on this evening. It's just a little bit too variant, a little bit too unreliable for me to go in and play it with any sort of a massive lean. But in terms of the pin locations, that's what I'm really stoked to go through here, because I haven't had a chance to completely deep dive them yet. And I have looked through a few of the key ones on here, like hole 2's at pretty much the same spot as it has been for the last few days. But I'm curious to see if they're as hard as I'm expecting them to be, because based on the weather, based on what we had in round 3, I don't think it's going to move that much heading into tomorrow. Like maybe you see slightly less birdies, maybe you see slightly more bogeys because of harder pin locations, but let's confirm that before making those sort of gestures and guesses. He said, smash the like button. You heard the guy. Go ahead and do so. He said, keep the rain away. It wasn't too bad today, right? At least we didn't have a delay out there. But yeah, man, it's crazy. I know you're commenting that because it rains every time I go to these events. It's like clockwork, man. So we'll see. Tomorrow, it's supposed to be rainy as well. So I can't keep it away every time I show up. What's going on, Antonio? Welcome on in, man. You're also a regular. Love to see you in these live chats too. And then you said, Brett says, Draftkings is offering plus 400 for a birdie on hole 6. That feels like good value. When we get to hole 6, Brett, I'm going to remember your comment and we'll talk about it. I haven't gone through it enough to really know. So I'll give you an idea in a second. Then he said, so Oakmont's kryptonite is rain and no wind? For sure, dude. I mean, 8.8 fairway average. I think your take is spot on there. It was soft as marshmallows. And I actually got to see a few Oakmont members on the course. I was talking to one of them at 9 green. They were not very happy about what they were seeing. They were at hole 9 in particular, there's a lot of slope on that green and there's a false front. And there were people hitting it to the portion of the green where balls should roll off the false front. And they were stopping because of how much slower they were. And I can tell you, those members were not happy about it. They were... it looked like their eyes were rolling into the back of their head, to put it lightly. What's going on, Mark? Nice to have you down there in the live chat too. But let's go through these. So at hole number 1, it's towards the left side, and it's not quite in the middle of the green on the left. It's slightly towards the back, and this is a tough pin location, and you can see exactly why. This sloping just to the left of the pin is going to be diabolical, and because everything runs from the front to the back of this green, and it's kind of towards the left side of this green complex, most players are going to aim towards like the middle of the green, maybe have it slightly oriented with a draw towards that left side. And if you're running in with just a little bit too much heat, you're going to catch that false front, or false side, I guess would be the best way to put it there, and end up in that rough. And past the screen, you also have slope heading into that back rough. The soft conditions are the only saving grace. If this was a pin location they used for days 1 and 2, it would play to like a plus 0.8 scoring average. I mean, it would be pretty much impossible at hole number 1, but because it's softer, and that's because of the rain that they got today and that they're expecting for tomorrow, it's still going to play harder than today. It's going to play probably like it did for days 1 and 2, but historically would be even more difficult than what it will be for tomorrow. Next up, we have hole 2, which is at the same spot where it's been for 2 of the 3 rounds at this point. You saw it today. You also saw it for round number 1. So really nothing to say about hole number 2. We know how that pin location plays, and for whatever reason, they refuse to use any other pin locations at hole 2. So to say that that's disappointing would be an understatement and a half. I just do not understand that decision from the USGA. Next up, we have 3. We have this front left pin location. It's on this little crown that you can see. So though on paper, you look at 3 and go, oh, that doesn't look all that bad. It actually is a pretty terrible pin location. You have that false front, which is going to be much more in play tomorrow than it has been the entire week. And everything runs away from that pin location. So once again, the saving grace is the soft conditions, at least for the putting around this green, but it might not be your friend when you're spinning balls down that false front. Next up, we have 4, which is the long par 5. This is a hard to access pin location. It is tucked just in this cove over the bunker. So if you have to lay up out of the rough, if you miss the fairway at 4, you're laying up to this sort of a par 5, it's going to be a very difficult shot to get close. And if you miss short in this bunker, no chance to get it close to that pin location. The miss would be short front right in this fairway or in one of those bunkers towards the right side of that green. If you do that, it's not a terrible up and down. Next up, we have 5, which is in the back left corner. So this is kind of like round number 2. Round 2, it was also in this cove in the green. And I believe it was the hardest that this hole has played the entire week. But the soft conditions really help on these smaller greens, especially on the shorter par 4s. Because if you hit the fairway, I mean, you can see what Sam Burns did here today. He hit it to 2 feet, which you just don't get at a firm and fast Oakmont. Tomorrow, you are going to see people that hit the ball close there at hole number 5, but it's definitely a little bit more tucked than what you had for moving day. Next up, we have 6, which I think we had the question about in chat, so we'll get to that. It's a front left pin location, so it's about where my cursor is right now. It's kind of like round 2. Round 2, it was a similar spot, and I believe it played to a pretty low scoring average. In fact, let's just go to Data Golf so I can show you guys. And this is before the cut line, so we have to keep in mind that a lot of shitty players were also playing the hole. It was birdied 14% of the time, so it did play over par, but 14% birdie rate is going to go up substantially after the rain, but also it's going to go up because you have the elite tier players and not all the shitty guys on the golf course. So the question we had is whether plus 400 might make sense at hole number 6. So, I mean, that's like a 20% implied birdie rate at plus 400. You give me an elite tier iron player at that number, then yes, I could think it makes a whole lot of sense because that birdie rate's going to go up with the softer greens to probably around 20% even before the cut line. And then you account for the fact that you have better players now. I would say that that number isn't like drastically off, but if you could find, like I said, elite tier players at like plus 400, then I think it would make a lot of sense. So good call on that, Brett. And hopefully that answers your question for you. He said, so there's no way to dry out the fairways, only the greens? Not even the greens here. I don't believe they have the sub-air system around Oakmont. So it's going to be real wet, Antonio. I don't think there's any way around that. The only way to really protect the golf course at this point is going to be to use really tough pin locations. And then if Mother Nature, and this is kind of what I'm hoping for, is I hope the early guys get a break because they got screwed today. They kind of deserve to get a break. Let's just hope that the storms come through in the afternoon like they're saying. If that happens, we could see some real big scores in the afternoon because that rough is going to be more punishing. It's going to be easier to miss fairways with water on the club face and the ball squirting off. In fact, I'm going to double check the weather app right now because they were also calling for it to be PM storms. So let's see. So they're still calling from about 4 to 7 p.m. tomorrow. So that would be towards the very end of play. Significant storms coming through Pittsburgh. So other than that, not much they can do to protect this golf course, though. And he said all those minus par rounds today made you sick. Yeah, imagine being a member, though, at one of the hardest golf courses in the world. Those people were much more sick than me and you, though. I took some fades that, especially on like the last few groups that had no chance of hitting. That made me pretty sick myself, man. I wanted to see some carnage on the golf course for sure. But let's continue with these pins. So we just went through 6 there. 7 is in the back middle. So let's get to the next hole real quick. So 7 is a long hole to begin with, going to play even longer. And on this back shelf, you do have some sloping behind it, which could make a ball run off the backside of that green. And it's a longer shot in, so it's definitely going to play harder than what you had for today. But I don't think it's going to be like some brutal pin location like you have at some other ones. Next up, we have 8. 8 is going to be in the back right. So today they moved up the tee box, which I was not too happy to see at hole number 8. I wanted them to tip it out, play 300 yards to that tucked pin location. But now it's going to be in this back right corner, which isn't as hard of a location to access, but they're probably going to tip it out again, right? You'd think for Sunday that they're not going to move it up, especially with no wind in soft conditions. So it's going to play like 300 plus yards to the back. When they tip it out, like for the front pin locations, days 1 and 2, I think it was like 289, 290 yards. To this back right corner, it might be a 310 yard par 3, which would kind of make sense for them to do that sort of thing, to just kind of give the meme to everyone, be like, yeah, it's a 300 plus yard par 3. So I would expect to see that. And it's going to play super hard, obviously, if they do that. 9 is going to be a front right pin, which I actually disagree with Michael Kim here. So Michael Kim said on his breakdown, I want to point this out, and it's not to say that I think he's, dumb or whatever. I just don't think he thought about this the right way. And in fact, if we could bet against Michael Kim to make a bogey on this hole, I kind of want to now because he clearly doesn't know what I know about this hole and what I know about this pin location. This hole at 9 is going to be impossible. It is going to be like by far the hardest pin location that you have. And let me show you why. And we talked about it the other day. So if you already saw this pin location breakdown from yesterday, you kind of know this. It's down here in this bottom right corner. And what you can't tell from the overhead view is, I mean, it's tucked over the bunker. That looks really hard. Is look at this little feature. We call this the piano bench at Oakmont Country Club. About right here, you can see this little crest, little high spot that you have right in front of this pin location here that takes balls in 2 directions. You have one slope that goes hard this way to the right side, and you have a slope right here that goes hard towards the front. A lot of misses into this green are going to be right about where this 2 is. In fact, I would say like 80% of your shots are probably going to be about where that 2 is. Oh, golly. Shot tracker is giving me a hard time there, but you can see, yeah, right about where this is right here. That means that your putt to this front right pin location, it's not going to be everyone, right? But it's going to be a good amount of people that are missing towards the left side of this green are going to have to deal with that piano bench. And I would say that the 3-putt percentage from that location here, from this 2 to that pin location, would be over 40%. And I shit you not. And I know that sounds really high, but I was sitting there at 9, all the practice day on Wednesday, and a lot of people were practicing to that location. The average distance for par that people had for putt was 15 feet. And I know that sounds absurd, but you'll see it tomorrow in action. That pin location is my favorite on the golf course, and I knew they were going to use it on Sunday. As soon as I saw people practicing it, it was like, oh, wow, these guys know what's coming to them. Next up, we have 10, which is on this middle right side over here. I would say that this is by far the hardest pin location that you have on this hole, and maybe the second hardest. I do think this front right might be slightly harder, but this one towards the middle right at 10 is sneaky difficult as well, because everything on this green does tilt from front to back, but also it tilts from this right side to the back left. So if you're trying to get to this middle right pin, which is pretty close to the right side over here, there's no way to get close to it. You'd have to hit a massive banana slice to get close to it, where it lands on the green and then starts running to the right into the slope, which players just aren't going to be willing to do. So what you're going to see is people hitting it towards the center of this green at 10 and just taking like a 15, 20 footer for birdie at the very best. Because if you take on this pin location over here, it's going to be hard to get it close unless you hit the absolute perfect nutted shot. And then it brings in that right miss into play, which this trench bunker that you have to the right side of hole 10 is extremely difficult to get up and down out of. Next up, we have 11, which is a middle right pin location. It's about where my cursor is right now, so not all that dissimilar to what it was in round number 3, but I would say a little bit harder just because it's a little bit more tucked towards that right bunker too. So you have the short miss that could be problematic and that right miss short-sided in the bunker. Next up, you have 12, so that's your second par 5. It's on the middle left pin location, and I'm kind of surprised too. Michael Kim said this himself, that they didn't put it on this left shelf, in this little like little like nook you have here on the left side. Instead, for hole number 12, it's a little bit past that nook, so it's on this low spot. I would say a whole lot easier than what you'd have on that high spot. So this is one of the few locations that is maybe a little bit more simple than what you had for the day before. 13 though is not easy. 13 is maybe one of the hardest pins that you have on the golf course. 9 is going to be up there, but this one in the back right corner is also going to be super difficult. I will say though that the softer conditions are going to make it a lot more doable, especially with the kind of slope that you have behind the pin location there. It's you're going to see some birdies at hole number 13, but you're also going to see some really big numbers, because getting up and down to that back right pin location is going to be exponentially harder than what it was for the last few days. 14 is a shorter par 4, but it's going to be a really tucked pin in this back left corner. It's just over the bunker, also towards the left side. I would say about the same difficulty as today though, because this pin in the back right wasn't easy either. 15 is a long, super difficult par 4. It's towards the front left now, so it might play slightly less brutal than the day before. It is in a low area as well, but you're not going to be able to use the slope or anything like that. You're coming in from like 230 yards on hole 15, so it's still going to play well over par. Actually, maybe a little bit easier though than what you had for today. This back right pin, I saw a lot of doubles. I was watching that hole quite often just because of how hard it was, And today, there were a few easy holes because of the soft setup. 15, I would argue, is actually even harder than normal, just because it's already over 500 yards and you got no rollout off the tee. Aaron Rye, for example, he made a bogey on this hole, but he ended up three putting for the bogey. He had 280 yards into the green and hit a 3-wood onto the front. So, by the way, that was a nutted shot. I bet against him today, and that was kind of the difference of him going over versus under, was him hitting that really good shot. If I'm going to lose a prop bet, I want it to be to that sort of shot, not somebody like getting lucky with the putter. So, tip of the cap to Aaron for busting me on that prop, but I can't blame him for being an absolute ball striking demon. Next up, we got 16 in the back right corner. I saw a lot of people practicing to this pin. It's super hard because it does bring in this little front right miss into play. And what you can't see from this overhead view is how steep the slope is from this right side of the green down to this grass. It's about a 6-yard drop. So over here on the right side, the miss is going to be to hit it to the fat side of the green. But if you're coming down the stretch, you need to make up a birdie to try and get into contention. You're going to take on that right side pin location. And if you don't execute, it could be a double bogey real quick because of how steep it is down there. 17 is the drivable par 4. This is, I would say, the second easiest pin location. It's easier down here on the front right. This front left, though, is, again, probably as close to that one as we can get. So a decent birdie chance, they would say. And then, so honestly, this finishing stretch, I could see some birdies from players. Front stretch looks hard. They're trying to kind of beef up the difficulty, but the back 9, not so bad, we would say. And then finally, 18 is a brutally hard pin location. This is where they always put it at Oakmont on Sunday. It's on top of this little swale that you have in the middle part of the green. So it's hard to get back onto that shelf. It's going to be even harder tomorrow because it's firm. Sorry, because it's not firm and fast, because of the fact that it's softer after all that rain. You're not going to be able to bounce a shot on the front to middle portion of this green and get it back onto that back shelf. Now you're going to have to carry it the entire way there, which brings in a little bit more left to right dispersion when you have to carry the ball the entire way. And if you miss the green here at 18, double comes into play real quickly because of how difficult this green is to chip. You could end up hitting a pretty decent chip and then coming down the slope into the low area. The false front can come into play, like more so on a pin like today, not so much in this back right corner. But the whole green has a lot of intricacy to it, and none more than on that top right corner. So to go back to the pin locations, birdie average, I think, is going to stay about the same. There are enough easy pin locations where I don't think it's going to get like drastically harder. So I would say like 2.4 per round would probably be a pretty good number for that. The bogey average, though, let's assume that they do get the rain in the afternoon, because that is a big part of this. We need some portion of the board to get affected just like they were today for the averages not to move that much. But let's assume that happens. The PM ends up getting that rain. Bogey average probably goes up just a little bit, maybe to like 4.75 per round. But the scoring average, I think, is probably going to be about +3. I could see there being more doubles just because of some of the pins being especially problematic and carnage-inducing in some cases, but nothing like where it's going to go from like +2.5 to like +4 or anything like that. It feels like if there's any sort of movement, it would be perhaps towards the harder side of things, but not by very much. So birdie average, 2.4, 2.5 per round. Bogey average in that 4.6 to 4.8 range we'll use as our little projection range. Fairway average I'd say it probably stays about the same. I don't think the course is going to dry up that much from day to day. Your green average might go down a hair just because the pins are a little closer to some slopes, but 11.5 per round at the very least, up to the 11.7 that you had for today. And just to give you guys the range on the fairways, 8.8 to 8.9 per round, so pretty much exactly where it was for today, is where I'd be putting these averages for tomorrow. So that's the condition segment. Again, I know we spend a lot of time going through these conditions, but having a good sense of exactly what to expect is the foundation of finding any sort of success when it comes to betting props. So it's important to go through it. It's important for all of us to be on the same page, because this live stream isn't just meant to be, handing out plays all the time. Like, we do that. That's part of the live stream, giving you guys an idea of exposure that you can tail for yourselves. But the far more important aspect and what you can really learn from going forward and, take into other slates is the process behind this, what we're looking for, what sort of pin locations are the ones that are problematic. How can you use the stats from the day before to learn for round 4? That's what I want you guys to take away from this. And when we go through the different stat categories here in a second, we're going to get onto DraftKings and we're going to go through birdie lines. We're going to go through round score, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to tell you guys what to look out for in value. So we are going to go through a few examples of props that I'm entering myself, but I'm also going to give you a little bit of a game plan on what to do with a few other spots as well. So let's hop into it. Any sort of bets that you want me to deep dive that can be on sports books like we have here. I'm up in Pittsburgh this week, so I don't have access to Prize Picks, Underdog, or Sleeper myself. I can't see those lines, but we're going to be talking through these prop boards, right, giving you an idea of how to attack those anyways. But if you have specific questions for those, just let me know, right? You can throw those props down in chat. Bring your better matchups even. You can throw by me as well. More than willing to give you guys my 2 cents on those. Let's catch up on chat. It says, I went to college at Pitt. Did it not get windy over there? It usually does, man. I think it's just a weird week where they're not getting a whole bunch of wind. And I have heard from a lot of people in the area that it's not just this week that they've gotten a lot of rain. They've gotten a lot of rain for an entire month in Pennsylvania. So it's not even just like today's weather that was causing the easier scoring. Even Thursday, Friday, the scoring was a lot easier than it probably should have been because they got like 4 inches of rain just this month alone. So yeah, I would say just an anomaly. Normally it's drier, and of course, yeah, we get wind up here. And that property, Oakmont Country Club, it's on top of like a big hill. It's not a mountain. We don't really have mountains in Pittsburgh. They're the Allegheny Hills, I always tell people, with that quote unquote mountain range, but it's on top of one of them. So it's exposed to the wind. It's wide open. There's no trees out there. If we get some real weather that comes through, there is a chance that there's some wind with that storm. They're going to feel it. I mean, it's even more so than before. It was already at the top of the mountain, but now it's got that like link style setup. There could be a lot of carnage at this course if we get the right sort of conditions. You're looking at Patty Reed for the over on birdies with an AM tee time. He'll get it done. You heard it there first from my guy Dave. If you guys choose to tail that, make sure to give him some credit, I suppose. Antonio says, am I shocked with Ortiz's play? You know he's a great golfer, but you forgot how good he was. I'm definitely surprised by it. And I think if anyone says that they saw it coming, that they're kind of lying to themselves a bit. I'm somebody that watches the Live Tour. I follow his game quite closely. He has had arguably the best season of his career this year in terms of top 5, top 10 finishes. It is easy to do that when you're only playing against 54 players. But even if you normalize it for full field events, it's rather impressive stuff. So I'm okay with it. He said also softer bunkers today made up a bunch of up and downs easier. Yeah, they were saying that on the broadcast. I was watching it on my way home from the golf course, and I did catch them saying that. It's I think a valid point. He said Henley for the over 2.5 birdies. I mean, I'm okay with guys at 2.5, like elite tier guys for an over on birdies. I guess it depends on the kind of juice that you're getting there, because if it was even money, I would say that would be a decent lean. But if I have to take more than, let's say, minus 130 juice, I probably don't want to do that. And kind of to go back to the one you said before with like Patty Reed, it's the same kind of thing there. Like if he was, let's say, minus 110 for the over on birdies, I could see myself taking those sort of players. But if they're like, they have any sort of juice behind them, I would be a little bit more hesitant about it. And that's not to say that I like those two players in particular. I'm just talking about players in general at 2.5 birdies, because to go back to the projected averages, I think it's going to be like 2.5 birdies per round for the field. Like, that's why I said, like, unless they're an elite tier player, there's somebody that's well above average, I think it's just a pretty decent line overall. But yeah, Patty Reed, I loved him this week. No complaints there from that one. Henley, I'm a little sketchier about that one, but he's a better player than Patrick Reed. So even though the shots gain metrics are a little short game dependent on Russ through the first 3 rounds, maybe the talent level makes up for it a bit. I think that would be pretty reasonable. Thoughts on fading Rory at 71.5? He seems so dejected. Yeah, anytime he says something in the media where he kind of looks like a head case and he causes a lot of stir, he tends to play really terribly after that happens. So I'm not against it from the narrative standpoint, but even just looking at the golf course itself, if the scoring average is going to be plus 2.5, plus 3, and I know on sports books, like if you go to DraftKings, for example, that Rory at 71.5, I think he was like plus 105, plus 110 or something like that. If you're getting plus money, so slightly over even money on that, I would be totally fine with betting against Rory. In fact, we're going to have to see where he is on DraftKings, but that could be something that we end up entering ourselves. Anyone else feeling like Hovland's going to get it done tomorrow? I think it's either him or Adam Scott that is going to punch their ticket to the U.S. Open. Just the most experienced guys you have towards the top. But I'm personally going with Adam Scott, but I could see Javi getting it done too. Stay away from Manny Bros. Woke. Their sandwiches suck. Their sandwiches aren't that great. I agree with you on that one, man. Western PA gets the Nar weather. They for sure do. It's just kind of a weird week, right? With all the rain that we have through here. I'd love to see Carlos hoist the trophy. I would too. Another live guy winning would be interesting too. I got to see that. I got to see it though. He's not a proven winner, unfortunately, Carlos. He is a stud though. He took Reed. There you go. And he said Scotty for the over 3 bogeys. Yeah, I was actually talking with somebody else that was looking at that lean as well. One of my buddies that also does a lot of prop stuff has a page of his own where he has subscribers. I wasn't as bullish on it. I will say I wasn't like running to the window to play it, but I get the idea. I mean, 4.5 average, bunch of push equity at 3, right? He'd only have to make 2 to go under that and bust you, which would be like 2.5 less than the field average. I mean, that's a hard projection to want to give somebody. A 2.5 projection, like I would for sure be leaning on the over. So I'm okay with that one. I didn't give that much pushback to my buddy that mentioned that to me, but I wasn't running to enter it, if that makes sense either. And he said thoughts on the winning score for the under 76.5. So that's -4 if it would go under that. And you said it's plus 110 right now. I think they could shoot under par, a Burns or an Adam Scott. The plus 110 kind of seems right, but it feels like if you want to bet a plus 110 on that, couldn't you find something on the sports books, like for example, like an Adam Scott to shoot under par, or like a Sam Burns to shoot like under 70.5 or something like that? You might be able to find like an alt line that might be slightly better than that, because like to shoot even par, like you might get like plus 140, plus 150 odds to do that on one of those players. That might be the slightly better way to go about that, but I'm not exactly sure what those alt markets would look like. Just something to consider, because I feel like they might make mistakes on those kind of markets and perhaps give you slightly better value if you line shop it that way. But let's find some value for ourselves. And my first reaction, guys, when I looked at this board is I did not agree with how high they had these birdie lines. I thought that they had these guys way too high. And just to check in on some of these, so Patrick Reed, he's -135 towards the over. Okay. And like I said, I want to see those guys at like even money that we were mentioning. So let's look at Henley. What was he at? He's -125 towards the over. That I kind of agree with. Like, I don't think that that's too bullish. What I think is too bullish, and I actually don't understand whatsoever, is how Matthew Pavon is -135 over. Harris English is -150 over. Hideki, these guys that have sucked all week, how they're like -175 for the overs and like plus 125 for the under. I know that they're not supposed to have like rain to go after tomorrow, but even in the easier conditions this afternoon, the birdie average was like, I haven't ran the average, but I would assume it was probably like 2.7, 2.8 per round. Like it went up, but it didn't go up like drastically just from the first half to the second half. So even if they are playing on a slightly easier golf course, and like, sure, like maybe they are projecting slightly over this number, the other part of it we have to remember is that these guys have all sucked this week. They're the worst form players. They're the guys that have been dog shit through the first 3 rounds. Probably shouldn't even have made the cut in some cases that are like plus 10 or worse. So how the hell are they projected better than the field average? Or at least what I perceive to be the projected field average for tomorrow. That's why I thought a lot of these guys were too high. And, we'd have to line shop it to find the ones that make the most sense. But like Pendrith being 175 for the over, like that's one that immediately stood out. The Pavon 1-2 at like -105. Like I just don't agree with that kind of sentiment. Let's see. There were a bunch on here that were kind of catching my eyes, but those were like the main 2, at least towards the top end of the board. But like even Erasmus at like -160, that feels just a little bit too optimistic. I mean, I know the soft conditions are going to make it easier than days 1 and 2, but even if we use today's averages, and this was by far the lowest scoring day that we've had so far, 2.44 birdie average for round number 3. So that's why I have that take, at least on this board, that maybe these are a little bit too high. And like, you would never see me in a million years eat like -175 juice, a -145 juice to take the overs on a lot of these players. It's not to say that the unders are like mega values that I'm like running to the window to go and play, but the overs, especially with the kind of juice that you have to pay, aren't spots that I'm actively going to be looking to play. And just to kind of for completion's sake, to go through the rest of the board on here, I mean, it's pretty consistently priced. Like, you even still have guys towards the bottom in what could be harder conditions, some rain in the afternoon, juiced towards the over. Like, for example, a Thurston Lawrence, yeah, he is minus 130 for the under, but like Rasmus Niergaard Peterson, he's about an average player, especially in this major championship kind of field, if not a slightly below average player. And he's favored to go over that sort of line. Like, I don't follow the same sort of thought process, I suppose, as what the sports books are doing for tomorrow. So a lot of the value that I see there would be in that fade direction. And yeah, my favorite, at least the one that just like seems the most mispriced that we saw through the board, was that Taylor Pendrith prop. So there's a chance that that one is when we want to be mixing for our exposure. Let's go to the next board here. So let's go with the round score, which I actually haven't looked through yet. This will be our first time going through it. So it looks awfully similar to today in terms of the pricing, which I actually agree with. So the birdie lines, they seemed a little bit too positive in my opinion. Like, they're priced way higher than what you had for today. But these lines are priced the exact same. Like, it just does not make sense to me. You can see that Rory there at plus 100. I actually think that's a pretty decent lean for the over, especially if you want to play that narrative and, you know, him being defeated, kind of looking like he was down on himself after today's round. Jon Rahm, I mean, he's attempting fade at that same kind of number 2, but I would say Rory's probably the one I'd prefer in that situation. So let's actually throw Rory in the shopping cart. That's another one that my buddy pointed out to me, by the way, the Rory over at 71.5. I was a lot more receptive to that one than we had with the over on 3 bogeys on Scotty. But let's see what else we have on here. So Brooksy at 72.5. He's essentially at the same exact line as what he was for today. And by the way, DraftKings did end up posting a board after we finished the live stream, which is just classic, right? That's just kind of on brand for what they're doing there. These later guys, what I think with these strokes lines that I've seen so far, the early guys, I agree with a lot of that pricing. Them being like 2-3 over par makes a lot of sense, especially because I don't think the weather is going to be as much of a factor. However, if the rains come through, that's kind of hit or miss at this point. We don't know exactly what it's going to play out like, but if it looks like tomorrow that the rain is really going to come through and impact these later guys, I could see taking some overs here, like especially for guys at 72.5. If you can find somebody with not a whole lot of juice there, that's not an elite tier player, I could see myself taking a stand against them. So like the first one that stood out was Victor Hovland. He's maybe not my favorite option though, because he's looked so good this week. And he is a really good ball striker too. So maybe he's not my favorite, but like a Henley at minus 105, somebody that struggled a little bit more. Also somebody that's been a little short game dependent. If we get that weather lean, then I'd definitely be looking at that sort of a fade. But even without the weather lean, an over on McIlroy could make a lot of sense. This under on Taylor Pendrith birdies could also be something that we're mixing in. But let's look at a few more. So let's go to bogeys or worse next. Average today, just to kind of recalibrate ourselves, is about 4.6. I think it's going to stay about the same, so we can use that for a lot of this. And they only have like late guys on here, so they have this sorted by tee times, and it's almost really the leaders that they only have on here. So just like the strokes lines, if it is going to play with a lot of late rain, I'd be looking to fade some of these guys that they have on the board. But before we know that definitively, I'm probably not going to be adding a whole lot of PM wave exposure because there's just a little bit too much unknown with it. Because, if they do end up getting perfect conditions, which of course could happen, that's what ended up happening for today, they're the guys in form. So they should play really well if that's the case for tomorrow. But if they do get that nasty side of things, I think there could be a whole lot of carnage there as well. And it doesn't look like they have greens of regulation up yet or fairway lines posted, but because they did for the first few rounds, they probably will at some point here on DraftKings. So that'll be something that we'll deep dive when they go ahead and do so. But let's find our favorite lean on here just to give you guys maybe a spitball idea before we actually figure out what we're going to enter for ourselves. 3.5 for Scotty. He's plus 115 for the over. I don't really want to fade the king Scotty. Just feels like it's a losing game at this point. Then you have a bunch of these guys at 5.5. 5.5 feels rather high on these, actually. So here's my take of what I've seen on here so far. They have the bogey lines too high, at least based on how it played today. Like especially like for these elite tier players, if they're not going to get that sort of rain later on the day, like I actually think a lot of these are probably too high, especially like the 5.5s. But at the same time, and this is what's so weird about all of it, the birdie lines are juiced up way too much, in my opinion. They've got these way too high comparatively. So I would say the board that I feel the best about fading right now probably would be these birdie lines, and especially the ones that we can get at super plus money. So I know if you're on like a pick'em site, you might not be able to get that same kind of value. The prop site where you can probably, or prop sites, I should say, where you can get the best value on some of these unders on birdies would be Sleeper and Underdog. So sites where you can get that multiplier where if you fade somebody that has all this plus money on it, you're actually going to get value for it. Right? Prize Picks, they do have demons and goblin props, but they don't do that for golf for whatever reason. It's just not a part of their program when it comes to the boosted payouts. So that's why I say Underdog and Sleeper, because on Sleeper, right, you can get like a 2x, even over a 2x multiplier on some of these props that are plus money. And same thing on Underdog. You can also get multipliers of 1 to 1.2 exit times for props that are so heavily juiced in one direction. I think the way to go about it would be to enter on those sort of sites, maybe take some of these like early guys for unders, because I just don't see it. Like, I'm not exactly sure what the payout on like this kind of combination would be, but I'm imagining that it would be pretty decent on a site like Underdog or Sleeper. So we're going to enter this Taylor Pendrith under. That's going to be the first prop I end up entering for myself for tomorrow. And we're going to spend some more time here to find a few more props. So strap on in. This is not going to be it, obviously. So where we leave off, yeah, Scott and Burns, both 72.5, and the under is plus 115. Yeah, so that's the idea, Antonio. So good thing I thought about that when you're looking at the round score one. You want to take the under 72.5 then, if you're gonna want to do that sort of thing. And it's crazy how they have that market at that sort of price, yet it requires such a different outcome. You want to definitely double check on those sort of things before you place bets like that, because a lot of times they make that mistake, and it's crazy how much it happens. You said thoughts on Carlos Ortiz versus Spawn for the Rivals. So that's a head-to-head stroke matchup that they do with the Rivals on Underdog. I would say that that's really close to 50-50, I would say, actually. I was going to say that I would lean towards Ortiz because he's been more of a ball striker this week than JJ Spawn. Spawn's gaining like 3 strokes per round putting. So, but the issue, and here's the other part of it, is that Spawn's been the better player this year. Spawn's been playing on the PGA Tour, much higher level competition. Live is still a great tour, but the PGA Tour is a little bit more competitive. That's why I think it's pretty close, because you have the ball striking favoring one player. One guy's just the better player. I'd say that's pretty close to a 50-50 on me. I did notice that, Mason, that one was a close call that didn't go our way. But hey, when they go the wrong way, you're due to get a few breaks to go your way sometime soon. So maybe tomorrow's that day for us on those hooks. Antonio says Decky under 2.5 birds is plus 125, and Rory under 3.5 birds is plus 100. Ooh, I agree with you on that. And I didn't see that one on Rory. I think that's a really sharp take too. I know we were looking at maybe the strokes prop. I think the over at 71.5 on that is also a pretty solid lean too, but plus 100. And yeah, I guess he's minus 105 now. Plus 100 is damn good odds, I would say. What's my favorite course in PA? I haven't played a ton of golf up here, actually, at least recently. You know, I've played a lot of my golf down there in Florida. I would say my favorite course in Pennsylvania, though, it's like choosing between my favorite 2 children with the ones in this area. Probably Fox Chapel. I've played it a couple times. I'm not a member there, was never a member there or anything, but I've played it a handful of times. It looks just like Oakmont, so it is the one that gets the most press in the area. It's actually even higher ranked on a lot of the top 100 lists than Oakmont Country Club, so I'd probably say that one. Thoughts on Rory for the under 3.5 birdies and then Hideki under 3 birdies? Yeah, if you can get push equity at 3 on sports books like a Prize Picks Underdog, I'd be all for that for the under at 3. I'm even looking at the under 2.5 at plus money. So that's another way you can mix it in, by the way, guys, is you don't just have to take like it on Underdog or Sleeper at 2.5. If you want to fade Hideki for birdies, you can do it with that push equity as well. That's a good way to go about it. And Pendrith, the same thing. I'm assuming you mean birdies, right? With that second part there, 100%. You saying it's 4.25 to 1? Or did I miss one in there? You said, oh, Rory, Hideki, and Pendrith. So I didn't realize you had all 3 in there. 4.25x on a 3-leg slip. It's kind of tough, man. Like they do 6x for a full 3-leg now. If you don't have that correlation, the payout is just a little bit too low, in my opinion, on that sort of combination there. When would be the last tee times I feel comfortable getting in before the weather? I don't know. So we don't know when that weather's coming through. We don't even know if it's going to come through in the afternoon. I don't have a solid answer for you, man. It's something we're going to have to monitor up until lock tomorrow. In fact, I'm going to have some exposure. I enter tonight, like that Pendrith one for sure. I'm going to have at least some exposure on it, either half a unit or a full unit bet. But most of the stuff I play is going to wait till tomorrow morning. Like undoubtedly, guys, the prudent thing to do, I mean, you can start researching props now. You can take some of your favorite lanes. I think that's totally fine. Enter a few slips. Wait for like your big dollar stuff until tomorrow morning. That's at least my advice. I think that's the prudent thing to do at this point. That weather in the afternoon would completely shake up the thought process. And it's not to say that you shouldn't be already trying to find value to enter in case that happens. But I mean, if it turns into a carnage fest weather, rain, it might even get windy in the afternoon. They're calling for like 10 miles an hour of wind, 20-mile-an-hour wind gusts. I mean, it could be a 2-shot difference as opposed to it being calm and sunny out there. So I would hold off on that one. He said, why are you liking Adam Scott for tomorrow? He said, Luke, what are some of my favorites? So I don't know if you saw the showdown stream yet, Mark, but I did give a lot of my favorites over there. But I really like Adam Scott. So to give you the Spark Notes version, he's got the most experience of everyone towards the top end of the board, which really matters Sunday at a difficult golf course, especially when it's a major championship. And also, he's got the best stat profile. He's almost been all tee to green play at this point. In fact, mostly ball striking. It's mostly been off the tee and approach that's really been clicking for Adam Scott. I like him too, so I'm not going to talk you off of him whatsoever. I think it's a sharp take that you're on Adam Scott. And some other favorites, I guess. I talked about a whole bunch. So again, it's kind of hard to choose between them. It's like choosing between my favorite kids or something like that. I don't have kids yet, but I imagine that would be hard to do if you had kids. Maybe Terrell Hatton. I kind of like where he's sitting. He feels like he's kind of primed to move up the board. Then Victor Hovland. Victor Hovland, I like the fact that he was grinding on the range this afternoon. And he doesn't have anywhere near as much experience as Adam Scott, but of the guys at the top, he probably has the second most experience, which again is a nice little touch to have. By the way, guys, smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and subscribe so you guys don't miss any of the content to come too. Adam Scott, does he pull this off? I sure hope so, man. I think he's the one that it would mean the most to. And like, I know a breakthrough win would be great for a lot of these new guys, but Adam Scott wins and he gets into the Hall of Fame. I would say that's probably even the biggest stakes out of anyone towards the top, because no one's even remotely close to the Hall of Fame other than Adam Scott. So yeah, I'm rooting for him, man. You said you're from Philly, Aronimink, Marion, Cobbs Creek. So yeah, I'm only going to talk about the west side ones just because I've never played any of those over there, but those are all great shouts. If I had to choose one of those three, I would actually go with Pine Valley. Isn't Pine Valley in Pennsylvania, or is that New Jersey technically? I know it's in that general area though. Thoughts on Hideki versus Pendrith for the rivals? You said clearly Hideki's the better player. Yeah, I don't think that I'm going to give you any pushback there, bro. I would say that Hideki Matsuyama is for sure the one that projects better. The big thing though, and this is the reason why it's even a thing, is Hideki was horrible today. I mean, horrendous. The form clearly favors Taylor Pendrith for this specific golf tournament, but I'm always a big proponent for using longer term stuff with props. You never want to be too short-sighted when you're entering strokes props, birdie props, whatever the category is. A stroke matchup would be the same exact way, right? You don't want to be too short-sighted, only look at this event for your handicapping. Long term, there's a massive advantage towards Hideki there. So yeah, no pushback. And of course, John, best of luck out there with everything you're doing tomorrow. So let's keep this going. So we're going to try and find a little bit more to enter. Pendrith, for sure, already locked in. We could go with the Rory fade. I just want to look at the shots gained metrics, I guess, before we lock that one as official play. Let's look at the shots gained today. So lost on approach, gained off the tee, and then was a neutral in those two categories. Let's see exactly how the round came together. So he had 2 birdies, really kind of fell apart towards the end of his round. The +2 in the front 9 also wasn't really doing that much. Yeah, I mean, if I wouldn't take him at even money, I would say, for the over 71.5. So like, for example, on a site like Prize Picks Underdog, if you can get him at 71 strokes, I would fade him there. At 71.5 though, you're going to either have to get a slight multiplier on a site like Underdog or Sleeper, or get the +100 odds that you can take on these sports books straight up. And I kind of wish we would have conned that 3.5. That was at +100. Maybe it is still at +100 on a site like FanDuel. Sometimes they have slightly better odds than what you find on some of these other sites. The +100 there can make a whole lot of sense too. But because I do have my funds currently on DraftKings when it comes to this sports betting, I don't have a FanDuel account set up out here in PA. that'd probably be the best way to get our exposure. And the other thing I kind of like about these overs on strokes, which is I think going to maybe be a bigger factor for round 4, is the double bogey equity. Those pin locations are dicier than what we had for round number 3, especially on the front 9, where a double bogey, I mean, that's already taken you from even par to +2 and over this sort of line. That is like a hidden value of taking that sort of prop as opposed to going with something like that under 3.5 birdies. So let's use that as our second play. So both into the plus money. If you're going to tail these on a site like Underdog Prize Picks, just make sure you're getting a decent line, right? You shouldn't be entering these for even money at this kind of a number, but if you can get some sort of a boost, a bump by 0.5 in either direction, and I think that would make quite a bit of sense. The issue is that your multiplier on a site like Prize Picks, for example, is going to be pretty dog shit on these two, 2.5x for 2 fades together. So Underdog, you can usually get a slightly better payout structure. That's the first place I would go for like a 2-man fade slip. But Sleeper is the best that you can get for 2-man fade slips, especially like on something where you're getting a multiplier on this Pendrith. Might even get a multiplier on the Roy over if they have them at 71.5 strokes. The beauty of that is you might even get over a 3x payout if you fade those two on a site like Sleeper. So I know right now I can't enter on the pick'em sites. I can't really show you guys in practice what that looks like because I can't even access the boards. But those are the kind of things that I'm thinking about when I'm entering pick'em slips is what is the site that I can get the best value on this combination, and is it giving me plus EV value? Like, is entering this specific combination on that site something that's going to make me money long term? And obviously you got to have a system for going out and evaluating your bets and getting that sort of idea. That's what I do with my modeling and my analytics and my projections for every slate when it comes to these prop slates. But that's the idea, right? You want to be very disciplined about what you're entering. And even if you're not as in depth as I am when it comes to breaking down the EV of your slips beforehand to make sure that they're good enough to play, just be thinking about it, right? Even if you're not fully going in, breaking it down with actual numbers, you should at least be like double checking yourself, making sure you're getting the best numbers available, and that it's something where, and I'll say this, like the 2.5x slip on like Prize Picks, that's a plus 150 prop that you're taking, right? Because you don't get the 2.5x isn't on top of the money that you're putting in, right? If you win on Prize Picks for 2.5x, that 1x that you're putting in for your money is included as part of that. That's why I say to be so prudent about this, because I mean, let's just remind ourselves, a simple under on Taylor Pendrith is plus 125, right? If you're only getting plus 150 for a 2-leg parlay, they better be juiced at like minus 200 or more odds if you're taking that sort of thing. So just be smart about it. Make sure that you're getting a decent payout on it. And if you join a site like my Patreon page, which by the way, there's a link down below to go ahead and join that, you're going to get a really good sense for what that looks like, because I'm always including the payouts and kind of the thought process behind the payouts as a part of my Patreon page. Also, on top of that, you guys get access to all of the different stat averages that I'm posting for these rounds, weather reports for every single round as well, and every single slip and every single prop as I'm getting to it, which for most weeks is Prize Picks, Underdog, and Sleeper exposure. Those are the main sites that I play on. But now that we're up here in Pennsylvania, this week it's a lot of the sports books that I'm playing on for this given week. But as we've mentioned a few times during this live stream already, you can take that exposure that I'm using on the sports books and easily translate that to props and slips on sites like Prize Picks and Underdog. So make sure to check out the Patreon page if you guys want all my exposure for Sunday. And it's obviously not just for the US Open here, but every single event that we have on the schedule. Next week is the signature event up at the Travelers. It's a really good field, at least. It's a week after a major, so I know not everyone maybe fully pumped up for that sort of event, but it's a really good golf course, TPC River Highlands. And on top of this week, all the exposure for tomorrow, join the Patreon page and you get all of that, as well as for all the events throughout the rest of the season. So it's the obligatory plug for the Patreon page here on the live stream. And to find a link to that, again, it's in the link in the description of the video. So these would be the two main plays that we're going with so far. Might even add a third one because we're still going strong over here. I had a coffee before this live stream. So unlike a few days ago when I was starting to lose my energy late at night, if anything, the energy's going up. And I'm going to the casino after this, after maybe a half an hour, get some dinner, that sort of thing. And going to try and win some money from Rivers. And by the way, that's why I was asking for the outright pick before. I know we had a few people throwing their ideas in chat. We had a Hovland take. We had an Adam Scott take for the win. I want to hear a few more hot takes, maybe guys a little bit further back, because at the casino, I plan on putting any money I make on an outright. It's going to be a pretty significant bet too. So it can be a favorite. It can be somebody towards the top, but I am partial to somebody maybe a little bit further back. Antonio asks, do the soft fairways and greens kind of scare me for the under on birdies? I mean, a little bit, but not enough to get me off of it. No. He said plus 17 is always a short par four. I agree with that, but that was all the same today, right? We had soft fairways, soft greens. 17 was also still drivable par four, and the average was 2.44. So I think that that is a valid thing to at least have in the back of your mind, but that is a part of the process, right? That was already accounted for when I was going through some of those unders. I would say that if it wasn't soft conditions, that there's no chance that you'd have these sort of lines. I mean, if it was firm and fast, you'd have these guys juiced like minus 160, minus 170 towards the under. So I actually think that that narrative, what you saw, especially with the guys up top this afternoon playing so well, is kind of throwing off these sports books because these guys at the bottom aren't playing anywhere near as solid as golf. So I think they should be projected a little bit lower. So good question. Definitely a fair thing to think about, but not worrying me that much. Yeah, Three Rivers Casino, you know it well. Yeah, I'll be there, man. They've kicked me out a couple times before, but I haven't been trespassed from them or anything, so we'll be there. They don't like my game a lot of times. They don't like that I win money from them, especially on blackjack. But hey, tonight they're gonna have to deal with it a little bit. Thoughts on Burns versus Scott for a head-to-head? It's a pick 'em, and you said you like Scott, but you can see a Burns meltdown. So yeah, that's a strokes head-to-head, right? You're not talking about like for the full tournament, right? Where it counts that first starting stroke. If it's a head-to-head and it's just based on what they do for tomorrow, then I would really like Scott because Scott is the more experienced player. Shots gained metrics are actually pretty similar on both, mostly shots gained approach and off the tee for both players, but especially for Adam Scott. I mean, his stat profile looks beautiful through the first 3 rounds. And just to show you, I know we've alluded to it a few times, but just to show you the exact numbers on it, I mean, through the first 3 rounds, he's gaining 2 off the tee, 2 on approach, just absolutely spotless from that perspective. Hadn't gonna win it. I could see it, man. He's on my short list of guys that I like for tomorrow. So, and I got to say, he's one of those live guys that would just kind of stick it to the man if he gets the job done. Him and Carlos Ortiz, that would just be really funny. The Oakmont members would not like that, by the way. The couple that I talked to did not seem to like the live guys very much. Thoughts on fading Corey Connors at 72.5? Not sure if I've heard or not, but he hurt his wrist. I got a notification actually from the USGA, and I'm not sure if you guys got it as well. I didn't even have him as like a favorite or anything, but I got a notification on my app about him getting treatment on the golf course. So I did see that, Jack. I want to get a slight update on whether that's actually bothering him. In fact, when I'm at the golf course tomorrow, I guess I'll keep an eye on the range to see what's going on. Because, yeah, if he's injured, that would be a no-brainer. I mean, +3 scoring average, +2.5 scoring average is likely where the field comes in. And if he's injured, you'd have to think that he probably has a slightly below average round. But we'll have to see on that. I haven't done my full due diligence on that quite yet. I only saw that notification on the course. That's all I know about that sort of thing. I did see the scorecard too. After I got that notification, I looked at his scorecard. He had a terrible back 9. So it looked like it might have been affecting him. Who would be my top 3 guys for the best round 4 score if weather does not come in the PM? Number 1 would be Adam Scott. I mean, maybe he doesn't have the best score, but he's the one I have the most confidence in. Victor Hovland, and then Terrell Hatton would be my top 3. And if I just had to rank them, like not based on who I think wins, but just based on score, I would go Hatton, Hovland, then Adam Scott. But because of the starting position, obviously Adam Scott has a massive leg up on those other 2 players. But it'd be those 3 guys. I mean, you can see why. Victor Hovland's gaining 3 strokes approach per round. Adam Scott over 2. Terrell Hatton, he's about 2 strokes in that category as well. Just the ball strikers towards the top end of the board. So that would be the answer there. He said, Billy Blaze, they kicked you out of the casino for being too good. Yeah, they actually did do that to me, but I'm not gonna say anything else here because I don't want them to actually trespass me. If the weather does come in, you're saying, okay, for the guys for the best round 4 score, I'd go to the middle end of the board. So you're saying if the weather actually is a factor, I mean, probably like, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't really have anyone that kind of comes to mind for that. If you're just asking me who I think has like a decent chance to go off in the morning, I mean, I'm playing a bunch in fantasy. I don't necessarily have that much confidence in them though. They're all low ownership plays. But like a Colin Morikawa, he lost a whole bunch of strokes putting today. Like that's probably not going to happen every single day. John Rahm perhaps could be a little bit of a bounce back candidate. It's a tough one. I think if the weather doesn't come in, it's wide open. That's why it's such a tough question, is because there's not like one portion where I'm looking at it. Pick to win, Adam Scott. Then you said, am I starting to worry that Rahm might not win another major? I don't know about that. I think that he's still got it there, man. He's definitely hasn't had as much major success as he would hope for. But the last few times that we've seen him in contention, I mean, PGA Championship, he was there for a while. This week through 2 rounds, he was directly in it after the first 2 days. Let's give him one more major season, I would say, before you would say that kind of thing, because I mean, he's a stud. I don't think he's going to fall off that quick. And I don't know if you were looking for the odds, by the way, JGA, or if you're just asking who I think wins. With the odds included, I don't know who my favorite bet would be, but yeah, just, kind of taking odds out of it, I'd go Adam Scott. Of course, Jack said, thanks for the streams. Of course. Thank you for the kind words. And he said, on the top of my head, does anyone play bad in rain? Yeah, maybe a slightly weird question, but I think it's a fair one. Off the top of my head, no. Like, I don't think any of them play that terribly in the rain. And the reason we'd say that is that it was raining today for a decent portion of the round. And a lot of these guys at the top played decently, at least shot like even or minus or a little bit under par. So yeah, nothing really comes to mind there, but that's all I've got, guys. We're going to go ahead and cut off the live stream there. Go ahead, take a look at the Patreon page for every single piece of exposure that I'm taking for the next day. And I'll see you guys out there for next week and all the exposure for the Travelers Championship.